We literally just started the cycle of Koch Nisan. Koch Nisan, it discusses about the Sfirat Omer. And then there's a famous thing that we discuss, has to do with when things shifted completely from being a receiver to actually the one doing the thing, to use all of your abilities to bring Mashiach. Now, what does this mean? It's basically there's one general advice on what we have to actually do, which is basically what it says is that you have to take you have to first of all have the midah of akshanut, stubbornness, and then you have to use the power of the lights of tohu and bring them into the vessels of tikkun. And then, what does that mean? So we're gonna so really the whole Dvar Malchus after that is explaining that. So we're gonna go right into the Parsha Tazria Mitzorah right here, and we're gonna see what's going on in the first levels here. So now this is from Vav Iyar Tafshin Nun Aleph. So it explains on every single Jew has to do everything upon them to bring Mashiach completely and quickly. And basically explains that if it didn't happen tonight, then yeah, it's your problem. And you have to do something for that to happen. Now, this is the end of Nisan. Right now, we're literally Erev Rosh Chodesh. As this Kol Kitzin, all of the last things were already finished, actually, which means everything is actually ready. Hinezeh ba Mashiach is coming. So we can explain the emphasis on the Geula and the actions of every single Jewish person to bring it about for this Shabbos coming up now. First thing is the aspects of the Torah that this Shabbos is going on, which is the Parshat Tazria Mitzorah. And also that year it was also related to what was read in Mincha. This year we have them together also. Pirkei Avos of that Shabbos also, and related to the time of that Shabbos, and the month, and the day of the Sphira. We're going to connect all these things together. Parsha Shavua is Tazria Mitzorah. Now this explains these two parshas have a very strong connection with Mashiach. Tazria, it says Isha ki Tazriat v'yalda zachar, a woman that seeds first and gives born to a male, as explains that the aspect of birth is the inyan of the Geula. It says in the pasuk Yalda Tzion et Baneya, and the aspect of giving birth to a male represents the aspect of strength of the Geula, that is Nitzchi, which basically means that it goes on forever, it's eternal, that there's no galus afterwards. That's the aspect of the male. As it explains the aspect of the songs, okay? And the aspect of a male song, it explains in Chassidus. So the idea of what does it mean that a male was born, it goes on the birth of the soul of Mashiach, which is the highest level. As it says, it comes from the world of Dukhra. Dukhra in Aramaic means male. Okay, what does that mean? The Or Chaim explains, Parshat Tazria, also the Tzemach Tzedek, different places. Okay, it's the level called Atik. Atik is the male because it has to do with the Mishpia. Okay, if anyone has any questions, you could ask in the comments. Okay, we're going to continue. Isha ki Tazria represents of the general avoda of the Jewish people, which we are considered Isha, the female, and the time of the Galus. The aspect is Zriya, it's like sown. As it says, Zarati li ba'aretz, I sown you in the earth. We're like a seed in the earth. And it says, Habayim Mishash Yaakov, that through the seed that's sown in the earth of all of our actions, then it sprouts forth. Yatzitz uparach Yisrael. That the Geula is through Mashiach, the Messiah. There's no other exiles afterwards, which is the aspect of giving birth to a male. That's the whole idea of Tazria, how it's related to Mashiach. The next thing is like this. Mitzorah, it says in the Gemara, what is the name of Mashiach? Chivra Devei Rabbi Shmo. Who is Messiah? It says in the Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin, it says, Chivra Devei Rabbi Shmo. What does that mean? It means the one who has the leprosy in the house of Rabbi, in the house of the Rebbe. As it says in the pasuk, in Yeshayahu, Achen chayalenu hu nasa umachovenu savalam. He took upon himself our suffering. V'anachnu chashavnuhu nagua mukeh lakim meuneh. And we look at him like he has leprosy. We use the word leprosy. It's not really leprosy, but that's the word we use in English. My simana yetiv bene einai. Okay, what is the sign that he's Mashiach? That it's sitting between the eyes. Sovle chalaim. He is suffering of difficulties. Menugaim, and of leprosy. Okay, now Vunami menuga, and he also has the nega. Okay, now as it says, V'hu mecholal mipasheinu chtiv chalanu hu nasa. Okay, he's profaned from our sins, and he gets affected by it. Okay, more specifically, Zotie Torah te Matzorah b'yom Torah. This will be the day of his Matzorah, on the day he will become pure. Right? There's a lot of halachas on the purification. Okay? V'ad shenogin l'kol parsha b'shem parshat tahara. We actually call the parsha Matzorah, we call it the parsha tahara, which means the parsha of purity. This is the name of Mashiach in the time of the Galus, in the time of the exile. That on his own side, he is in a state of completion. As it says, Yaskil avdi yarum v'nisa v'gava ma'od. It says that he understands very high things. The Mashiach is going to be in a very high level. Okay. Nonetheless, he is suffering, and he has pains in himself, and he has the pains of the galus. And the day that he becomes pure means that he becomes purified from all of the leprosy. That talks about when Mashiach comes into revelation and actually redeems the Jewish people in the complete Geula. Okay, now that's basically what's going on with the names of the Parsha and how they're related to the Mashiach, the Messiah. Okay. Now we have a few questions on what we just said. So the following: what is the connection between the two Parshas of Tazria and Metzorah? That a lot of years we read them together. The name Tazria has to do with the aspect of giving birth. As it says, a woman, when she sees birth, she'll give birth to a male. Okay? So therefore the aspect of Tazria is related directly to birth. And that represents the Geula, Mashiach, revelation. But the word Metzorah seems the opposite of purity. And you have to do a special process to bring the person who is a Metzorah into being pure. So that shows on pain and difficulties of the Galus. So how do we unite these two ideas together? Another question is the following. When we continue the Parshas, Tazria, and then afterwards Metzorah, seemingly, when it says Ishatki Tazria V'yalda Zachar, a woman that gives seed first and she gives birth to a male, represents the ultimate Geula, that there's no Galus afterwards. Then we don't have any aspect afterwards of Metzorah that has to do with the Galus. So the question is, once we have the male birth, which is the first Parsha, we don't have any Galus, but right afterwards the Parsha on how to get pure. So what does this mean for us? According to this, in both Parshas by themselves, how it's related here. There's another question. In the Parsha Tazria, shows on Mashiach's revelation, the Geula. And then we discuss the laws of Negaim. Negaim means different skin lesions. If you have the hair, and then the lesion, or the lesion in the hair, there's all these different halachas that come out of it that shows on exile. In Parsha Metzorah, Shema Parsha, the name of the Parsha shows on Galus, as we explained, exile. But when you look at the Parsha, it's talking about the laws of purification, which shows on the Geula. So there's definitely an interplay here between them. So if you look at the names, then the first Parsha is related to the redemption. The second one is related to the exile. But when you're talking about the content of the parsha, it's the opposite. The first one is related to the exile. And the second one is the redemption. So since the name of the parsha expresses what is going on in the parsha, it should have been that the laws of negaim, skin lesions, which is the idea of exile, should have been called mitzorah, the second parsha. And the parsha that's talking about purification should be called tazriya. Okay, that's a good question. We're going to see now. Okay? Now, let's continue. The name of Mashiach, since Mashiach is the redeemer of the Jewish people, why do we emphasize in his names of the idea of the galus, that we call him the Metzora? We call him the leper. Okay, now we're going to start explaining the answer to these questions now, okay? It says in the verse, Adam kiyeh be'or besaro. When a person has a lesion in the skin of his flesh, it says in Likkutei Torah that Adam, when it says the word Adam, man, it goes on the level that's very high, the way that he is complete of everything. So a person like this, that his actions are very good and they're at a very high level, and he fixed everything, how could it be that he has on his flesh, the skin represents the lowest part of the person, that he did not separate the good and bad even on the lowest part, being all his actions at such a high level, he had such levels of completion, but when you look at the skin, there is lesions, which means on the lowest level he didn't do the purification. Okay, these are the lesions, the negaim. Now, why is that? Because in his spiritual service of God, he clarified and fixed all of his actions and separated the bad from the good in all things. Only the psolet, which means the waste or the negative parts, that's at the last level of his garments, was not purified, and therefore on his skin was then born only in the exterior part. So it actually shows on a high level. We're going to explain it more. Okay, any questions? Feel free to ask now. Okay, now let's continue. It says in the pasuk, Adam kiyeh or besaro lenegatzarat. When a person has on his skin the lesions, what does it say on the skin of? It says beor besaro. It says on the skin of his flesh. Now, this shows that it's not connected to the essence of the person and his sinews, but it's not even his flesh itself. Okay, that the flesh changes through eating and drinking, that it turns into blood and turns into his flesh. Rather, it has to do with the skin that's around the flesh. Okay, so basically it has a double emphasis, not just the flesh itself is the lowest level, it's the skin of the flesh. Okay, now it's basically, that means it's the most exterior part of his flesh. It says, Adam ki ye be'or bisro, when it'll be on the skin of his flesh, which basically means the words of the pasuk tell you that it's not something that is normal, rather it's just a mikra, just a happenstance, okay, that goes out of the normal ways of that things are normally. And then, only then, nega tzarat, it's only a lesion of a tzarat. Okay, the word nega in Hebrew, okay, comes from the word negia, to touch, which basically means that the inyan is that it's something that's not desirable. The thing that is not desirable is not even connected to me, even not to my exterior part, or rather it's just touching me. Okay, that's basically what it says. It says in the Torah that even in the Goyim, the lesions are actually a very high thing on the other hand. Okay, so we're saying on one hand, they're just the exterior part of your flesh, which means the skin of your flesh, which basically means that when you get to the level where you clarified all the aspects of your being, and you're at a very high level, and then being on this high level, the only thing left is the lowest part of the exterior part of your skin, which is on your flesh. Then you have the lesions there, but on the other hand, it's actually a very high level. Why? It says the following. When do we say the person is impure? When a Kohen, a priest, tells you he's impure. Now, if the Kohen didn't say that, then they're not considered impure yet. Rather, they're called Orot Elyonim. They're called higher lights. But these very high lights come down in a way that they're called Dina Kasha. They're considered strong judgments of holiness. We're going to explain what this means, okay? We could say the following. These two things that the Negaim are only psolit, they're only the waste at the end of your garments that didn't get purified yet. They're very high things, which are higher lights. Seemingly they're opposite. We're going to explain really that they're connected. Meaning on one hand, it represents the lowest part of you that didn't get purified yet, but you purified everything else. On the other hand, we're saying that the source of these lesions are very high lights, because the word nega comes from the word oneg. As explained in the books of Kabbalah, the oneg represents the aspect of keter. We're going to explain it more. Since the aspect of negaim, which are the lesions, they are in essence very high things, very high lights. Therefore, when they go down below, okay, they create something that's not wanted, which is the aspect, okay, through the unika of the chitzoni. We're going to explain what this concept means, okay? Now, we said the word nega means nogea. Nogea means to touch. Therefore, it means that it's only something that's touching me, and therefore it's very exterior, the fact that they're there, okay? So the way to fix this, which is the tahara of the Matzorah, is through something new. It's not through something new, rather through a revelation of the thing in its true essence of the Negaim, that they're really higher lights, which basically means what we're learning from this. Yeah, we follow Talmud, we live in the Holy Land of Israel, okay, and we're Jewish, yes. Okay, we're going to continue in the class is the way to fix the lesions that on one hand they represent something very exterior to you is by revealing that they're really high lights, okay? It says in the verse, Zot Torah this will be the laws of the Matzorah in the day that he will become pure. Okay, guys, if you want to get in touch with me, I have an Instagram, Rom Tuvia, or we actually have a school community where we're teaching also, for the nations as well, Kabbalah. All right, so if you message me, I'll give you the link to the school community. Okay. That the Taharato is through the aspect of Yom. Okay, this will be the day of his purification, which is it's called Or V'Gilui. Okay, the concept of day means light and revelation. It says in the pasuk, Vayikra Lokim L'Or Yom. God will call the day light, which basically means revelation of the lights of the Negaim, of these lesions. Through this, we're actually stopping the Yanika of the Chitzonim until that this basically what we're trying to say is that when a person has lesions, by revealing that the lesions are very high lights, that's how you stop it from staying in impurity and become pure. Okay, we're gonna explain. Okay. Okay, let's continue. The explanation is the following. The reason why we have Yanikat of the Chitzonim. Okay, what is Yanikat Chitzonim? Is that God wants to give good things to the Jewish people, and then through that to everyone else. We have to be the channel to bring the light onto the world, into the nations through the Torah. Now, when we aren't doing our job properly, then some of the light gets stolen from the other side, and then it flips on us. This is the aspect of the Negaim, okay? Of the lesions. It happens in a person. His actions are very good, but maybe a little bit is not good. So whatever is not good causes the light to go into other places, and then it causes problems. And that creates lesions. And how do you fix it? We're going to explain now, okay? Explains the following. Let me see, okay? Let's see how much time I have to finish this. Okay. Now, the reason why there is a unika of the chitzonim, which basically in English it means the extraction from the other side, till it causes you to be opposite of pure, okay, in a revealed way on the exterior part of your being, okay, that the orot elyonim of the goyim, these very high lights turn into lesions, is because the lights from Tohu, these infinite lights with crazy potential and power, they cannot go into vessels. Okay, so if you don't have the right vessels for these lights, then you got problems. Okay, according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, it says Or Tohu, that's higher than the ability to enclose in the vessels of Tikkun. We're going to explain this a bit. The whole thing is about this. That through this comes, through the breaking of the vessels, all things that are not desired. Okay? What does that mean for a person? Or at Elyonim, the higher lights that are not in the vessels, it causes the aspect called ratzo. Ratzo means desire, which is the aspect called klot nefesh, which means expiry of the soul. When a person's desire is too strong. It says, Shekalot tichle or ha-nefesh v'nistalek min ha-kelim. That when a person's desire of the soul is too strong, then it goes out of the vessels. Okay? Which is the aspect of mi'ut ha-kelim, the limitation of the vessels. Okay? If a person doesn't have vessels below, then the light doesn't have a place to spread forth within those vessels. Rather, the light then goes and unites with Hashem in the higher realms. If a person is in such a state where I want high things only, and he just doesn't have the right vessels, and therefore these high lights cannot go into vessels, through this could be created called Yanika Techitzonim. This could cause the light to be sucked into the other side. Why? Because you don't have shuv in the kelim and the letters of kedusha. You don't have the aspect of returning. You don't have the vessels to hold the light. And then therefore, the desire alone could create the nika, the sucking of the other side, take the energy from the kedusha. For example, let's say a person prays in the morning and he's very excited in his prayer and he feels very high lights. If he doesn't learn Torah after that, there could be a creation from his excitedness. It could turn into judgment, kapeda, which basically means a person's very particular about things, and kas, anger. And this could cause a person to be arrogant. Okay, so that means, look at that, from a very high praying, you go to very high levels, you could turn arrogant. The advice is the following: the sages say in Sefer Yetzirah and the Tukkunei Zohar. It says, if your heart runs, you have to return to one. Which basically means after the desire, you have to go and return. Which is the idea of bittul, which basically means nullification. Until you're able to nullify yourself in complete existence, that you don't have any power at all to even be excited with the fire, which is the aspect of a person feeling themselves. Rather, you go to the level where you become like a stone, an inanimate object. It's actually required for a person, meaning to say, we want to be at the same time draw down the highest levels of holiness, and at the same time have the vessels for it. So it's pretty extreme. So it means it requires a very high level. What's the high level is that you have to get to the level where the prayer is on such a level, but you have to also be able to completely remove all those desires from you and be like a stone. As we see, when a servant comes before the king, when you come to stand before the king, then you don't have any of your own abilities anymore because you are nullified in your complete existence. And because you're nullified, then the aspect of your desire will be able to settle in the vessels of all the different vessels. And then you're actually creating the Dir B'Tachtonim, God's dwelling place in the lower realms, by doing that, which means if you only stay in a state of desire and running and expansion, then you actually, that itself is causing a Yanika to the Chitzonim. Now, from this we see that the action called Shuv, which basically means return, after the Ratzo, is that also these very high lights that beyond the lights that go into vessels, they actually could go into the vessels. So you're pulling off the impossible. Okay? In order for these two things to connect fully, which is the elevation and then drawing down, which is chesed and gvura, so to speak, there has to be something that is revealed beyond both of them, which is the idea of tiferet. And tiferet, the source of tiferet, according to Kabbalah, is in Keter. And Keter is higher than the Seder Ishtalshus, higher than the order of the worlds. And through that revelation, you're able to unite the two lines of Chesed and Gvura, elevating and drawing down, Ratzon Shov, that even these great lights, they should draw down into vessels. And this is what it means that the Metzora gets purified. It says in the Pasuk, Zot Tieh Torah to Metzora, B'yom Tarato. This will be the Torah of the Metzora on the day he will become pure. Torah to Metzora, and not Tahara to Metzora. Why did I say Torah and not Tahara? Why does the word Torah means instruction, as opposed to the word Tahara, which means purification? Because the way to fix the Metzora is through learning Torah. Because the aspect of learning Torah has to be in a way of nullification. As it says, Nafshi ka'afar l'kol tiyeh, my soul will be like dust to all. And through this, patach libibotecha, and then when your soul is like dust to all, by having this bittul, then your heart opens to Torah. Now, through the nullification, the making yourself like dust, you now, by doing that, you become a vessel for the Torah, which is very high, beyond Seder Ishtalshus, which is the aspect of Tiferet, as the sages say. It says it in the Masechet of Gemara Brachos, Tiferet zo matan Torah. Therefore, the Torah, and therefore from the aspect of Tiferet, which reaches the Keter, which is the idea of nullification, you're able to now unite the desire and the return. That even these very high lights that normally cannot go into vessels will now get revealed in the vessels. And through this, you nullify the possibility of any yanika of the chitzonim, any sucking of the other side that's trying to steal the light, right? If your person is very high in Torah and his mitzvahs and he feels very connected and he's very spiritual, that is actually causing problems because you might be tapping into this light of tohu, but you're not putting it into vessels. Since you're not putting it into vessels, you're causing now yanika, which basically means a leaking out of these lights. And then you actually stop the purification process and you create the negaim, you create the lesions. And since they are very high lights, okay, they come down into lesions. Now, what does that have to do with Galus and Geula? Okay, the negaim of the Metzora and the Tahara of the Geula. We're going to explain now what this means. The aspect of Galus is the idea of Helam and Hester, which means a concealment of God's light, as it says in the verse, Adotenu lo ra'inu. We did not see the wonders until there's a darkness that's doubled and redoubled darkness of the end of the Galus. From the source, it is something that is very high lights, that it cannot be revealed in vessels. And even we can't even see it. It's so high we can't even see it. It says in the pasuk, Yeshet choshech sitro, that God spreads darkness and that's hidden. Okay, because it's so high, the lights are so high, they're beyond a person's revelation and perception. And then when it comes down and there's a very concealment and darkness, that all of the negative things come in the galus, right? We see the Jewish people suffering in the time of the exile over and over again. Why are they suffering? because of this situation that the lights are so high, but where they come down is we don't see anything. There's all these different difficulties and all these different aspects. Now, since in the source, it's a very high thing, it's very high lights. Therefore, after it comes down as darkness, and therefore it looks like the opposite of any purification, looks like something impure. But this is only, a person has to know, this is only in the exterior parts of it, on the lowest level, in a way that it's just touching. The problem is that we start identifying with the darkness of the galus, as that's the reality, and that's what we think is real. So how do you fix this thing? You have to realize, number one, it's just touching. It's not you. It's something that's exterior to you that needs to be fixed by having the right vessels. We're going to explain how to do it. So the tikkun, the way to fix it is the following. It says in the Ma'asenu v'avarotenu kol zman meshech galus, our actions and the work we do of the whole galus is not through something new, rather through revealing the true essence of what the galus is. Okay? Now, it's meaning to say it's not about, let me nullify the exile. It's bad, get it away. Rather, it's from transforming it, which means already inside of the darkness, there's something going on there. You don't have to push it away. There's something you have to fix. You have to make the vessels for that light to be expressed. How do you do that? Is by revealing the aspect called Aleph, which is the Aleph means Aluf Olam, the master of the world. You transform the Gola into Geula, which are these higher lights that are beyond any revelation, that through all of the actions in times of the exile, we cause it that these higher lights that are beyond revelation could be drawn down and revealed below. Okay? And then automatically, when you do that, all of the possibilities of any concealment transforms. Okay? And to the point that even anything that's opposite to purification, even in the most exterior part, goes away. And then the goyim, which we said are the aspects of the lesions, get transformed into oneg. We said oneg means pleasure. The lights of Tov get revealed. Now, we could say the following. The advantage of our actions and our work of the days of Galus, that through this we cause that the higher lights will be drawn down and revealed below. Okay, how do we do that? Is because of we need certain attributes in our soul to bring out in order to create the vessels for the lights of the galus that are hidden to be revealed. Is through the bittul and the mesiras nefesh during galus. Okay, meaning the more nullification you have and mesiras nefesh, giving yourself over beyond your intellect, that creates the vessels. Through this nullification and giving yourself over, that comes from the level of the yechida of your soul, the highest part of your soul, that receives from the yachid. Okay, the yechida is feminine. That means where is it receiving from yachid, which means the idea of God's oneness. That's beyond all the serious talshus. Then you're able to actually unite the desire and the return of the higher lights that draw down into the vessels, and this is the way to actually fix the thing. Okay. According to this, we could explain the connection of the parshas of Tazria Metzora, which we said the first name is the idea of Geula, of Mashiach time, and the second name is Galus, which means exile. And then we have the idea of the Negoim, is in Parshat Tazria, which is like Mashiach stuff, and then the Tahara, other way around, Negoim is the lesions that we have in the first Parsha, which is like the impurity, and then the Tahara in the Parsha Metzora. Okay, so what's going on there? We said the names. The first name shows on Mashiach, the second name shows on Galus, but the content of the first Parsha is on Galus, and the content of the second Parsha is like Mashiach. So why are they flipped like that? We're going to explain. Since the Geula is not a matter by itself, rather it's something that's revealed. It's the revelation, the true revelation of the Galus, which is the aspect of the Tahara of the Metzora through the revelation, the true revelation of the Negoim, right? The Negoim look like these lesions at the end of the skin. Okay. Now, when you reveal really what they are, they're these highlights. So that same thing, Mashiach is called the Metzora. So therefore, he's going through that process. So in order for us to be in Geula state, we have to go through that process as well. Okay? Let's continue. Okay, Lachin Acharei Akdama Klalit. So after we explain these two aspects of the both parshas, that we said, Isha ki tazria yelda zachar, a woman that seeds first and gives birth to a male. That represents the idea of the galus, which is tazria, is the seed, the seed sown. And then you come to the geula. There's no galus afterwards. Is the following thing, okay? All right, no, it's not, okay? You're asking questions, comments? No, it's not that, all right? It's actually a Sefer Torah, okay? In Parshat Tazria, okay, it talks about the idea of the negoim, of the lesions. Since the lesions are representing these very high lights, okay, that will be drawn down and revealed below in the Geula, okay? Parshat Metzora, which is the galus, exile, talks about the purification of the lesions. Since the purification of the lesions is through revelation, the true revelation of the lesions, okay, which is the truth of what the galus is, that it's a high thing, okay, which basically we're coming to show that the idea, it's called Metzora Lema'aliyuta, that the lesions are in a way that it's for our advantage, a positive one, in a way that it negates any possibility of anything opposite to that. Okay? Since these highlights draw down and get revealed below, therefore the ultimate geula, that there's no galus afterwards, will be revealed through that same aspect. Okay, now, skip these parentheses. Okay, now, we see about the name of Mashiach, he's called Metzora, he's called a leper. It says Metzora shel Beit Rabbi, the Metzora of the house of Rebbe. It says in Aramaic, Yativ Beinei Aniyei Sovlecha Le'im. It sits between his eyes, suffering of these different lesions. Menugaim Bahu Nami Menuga. He has also these skin lesions. That it says Mashiach Nimtza Ba'olam Bizman U'Makom Galut. Mashiach is in the world, in the space and time of galus. Okay, meaning on a level of galus, he's in the world. That he's suffering of all of the pains of galus. It says in the Gemara, in the continuation, Amarav, Imin Chaya Ukagon Rabbeinu Kadosh. If he's from the living, then he's like Rabbeinu Kadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Im Mashiach Ma'otan Shechayin Achshav Vaday Hainu Rabbi Kadosh. Meaning to say, if Mashiach was from one of the people alive, it would be Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Okay? There's a whole Gemara there, because Rabbi Yehuda Nasi actually was suffering these different pains. Okay? And he was a complete pious person, as the Gemara says. Rashi says over there. Now, umetzape mikotzer ruach uvekilion inayim nitkolot. Mashiach really wants to reveal himself from concealment. The Melech HaMashiach goel et Yisrael b'gula mitit v'shlema. Melech HaMashiach, he is redeeming the Jewish people in a complete geula, that there is no galus afterwards. Okay, as it says in the Rambam, Yamod Melech Beit David, the king of the house of David will come. Okay, Hamur l'ayil kashur gam perik sheni avot. What we said above is related to Pirkei Avos, the second chapter. Okay, we're going to explain now. It says the following. It says Rabbi Omer, Ezu derech yeshara she'yavor lo adam kol she'tiferet lo aseh tiferet lo min ha'adam. It says, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, what is the pathway that's a straight path that a person should go on? One that is tiferet to the one doing it, and tiferet from other people. Okay, tiferet literally means beauty. What does that mean? What does it mean? Ezohi derech yeshara. What is the straight path? It says in the pasuk. There's a lot of verses in the Torah. It says Yesharim darchei Hashem. The pathways of Hashem are straight. Shiavor lo Adam, that a person should go. Adam is a very high level, as we explained before. That's question number 2. Question number 3. Why does it say Rabbi Omer? Rabbeinu Kadosh, Rabbi Huda Nasi says. It doesn't say Rabbi Huda Nasi, it says Rabbeinu. Okay, and it says Rabbi Omer. So why did they call him Rabbi? So explain the following is like this. It's a connection between the revelation of Mashiach and the coming of Mashiach. That's what the Pirkei Avos is trying to tell you here. We're going to explain now. Okay? This is the following. Rabbeinu Kadosh, it says about him, I Mashiach Mo'otan Shechayin. The Gemara says, who is Mashiach? It says, is it from someone who is alive? Then it's Rabbeinu HaKadosh. It says it's Rabbeinu HaKadosh, our holy rabbi. That he's suffering all of these different lesions, and he's a very big pious person. Even though he's very pious, that he completed his level of service, nonetheless, he was suffering with these lesions, which is the difficulties of the exile, like Mashiach, that is called Chivara Devei Rebbe, the leper of the house of Rebbe. Okay? Even though he's in a complete state at the highest level, he is still suffering the different pains of the galus. So it says, Rebbe Omer Ezu Derech Yeshara She'avor Lo Adam. Rebbe says, what is the straight path the person should go on? Adam Hazeh. It represents this type of person that's very high level, that he's incomplete in all the levels that he's in. Mukhsharin Ma'asav, his actions are very complete. And he fixed all of his things. Only the last thing, the psolet, the waste at the end of his garments were not clarified, which we explained represents the leprosy. Because of the galus, like Rebbe. And in our generation, in our last generation of the exile, right before Mashiach will coming, that all the things are already finished. Now, what is saying here is that really every Jewish person is on this level. The question is the following. Since we already finished all of their actions in the time of the exile, so for us the question is, what is the straight path? What is a straight path? It means the most easy, less resistant path of all the pathways of the Torah that a person should go on. That for someone who finished all of his work in order for Mashiach to come. That's meaning when we learn the verse now in Pirkei Avos, that's really the question is, we already did all the work. What's the easiest way now to do the final thing? So the answer is, Kol shehi tiferet lo osea v'tiferet lo min ha'adam. Whatever is tiferet to the one doing it, and tiferet to the person. Tiferet represents Torah, because we said above, Tiferet is Matan Torah. That through Torah at such a high level, it's able to unite the Ratzo and the Shov, the desire and the drawing down, okay, which is like Devekus for Hashem, and Shov, which is drawing it down, okay, to make vessels. That what this means that these very high lights should be drawn down into vessels. Through this, it will be revealed the true essence of the galus, which is that they're actually the exile, all the difficulties, they're very high lights. In a way, when you reveal that they're very high lights, then the galus really goes away. You negate the whole thing. And then you create a redemption, there's no other galus afterwards. Now, why is it that the Torah is the path, the straight path, for the revelation of Mashiach? It says in the pasuk, that Mashiach, not in the pasuk, it says in different places, that Mashiach has two aspects of his being. One of them, he has to be a king, a melech, which is called Melech HaMashiach. And one of them, he has to be a Rav, he has to be a teacher of Torah for all the nations. The difference between them is the following. The idea of melech, king, shows on his ability to influence in a way that's transcending, that's through people nullifying themselves to receive the kingship. And the aspect of the Rav, the Mashiach, is a teacher, that Mashiach teaches that he's able to influence in a way of very inner way, that's through learning Torah. And if it says if you teach someone Torah, it's like you give birth to them. That when you combine both of them together, Melech and Rav, king and teacher, which is the transcending and the inner light, that is when you're able to take these very high lights that's beyond vessels and drawing down into vessels. And how do you do that? With the power of Torah. Torah is the power to do that. How do we explain that in relation to the time? We're about to get into the month of Iyar. Tonight is the month of Iyar. It's the second month of the year. Okay? And we're going to try to wrap this up. Okay? That the Avoda is from below to above, right? Because Nisan, everything happened from above. Mashiach, when we had revelations of God and when we're in Egypt, He took us out from above. So that means in these months of Nisan and Iyar, it gets emphasized the connection and the unification between both of them, that these very high revelations, very high lights of the month of Nisan gets drawn down in an inward way through our actions down here. And how do you do that? Okay, is the aspect called Tiferet Shebet Tiferet, which is Beit Nisan, which is the birthday of the Rim Marash. You're able to unite both things together. And since these revelations of the month of Nisan, which is the month of redemption, draws down into into our own actions, then that causes the nullification of any galus afterwards, that there's no galus. And that's why we say Iyar is the Rosh Tevos, if you say the word Iyar, it comes from Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rachel, which is the 4 levels of the Merkava, of the chariot. Okay, which is Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet, which is the aspect of the light, and Rachel, whereas the 4th is the aspect of the Malchus. Okay, and it's the vessels. So therefore, we have to unite these 3 things by putting the lights in the vessels. Okay, that's basically, it goes on a little bit more. We are going to pause it here. Okay, and will be continued next time.